Welcome back to 16RC Tank Workshop. I'm John. In the last video I started stripping down the Panzer III. We'll continue on with that today, see how far we get, hopefully till the end. At the end of the video I'll show you some of the components that came with the kit, and I'll show you some photographs of the original parts. These are parts that I hope to do some work on in the future. Some kit parts I'll keep, some parts I'll make from scratch. Let's continue now by removing these two top decks. This top one is steel along with the hatches. The lower deck is made from aluminium. I'm undoing the countersunk screws that hold the deck to the brackets. You can see some more countersunk screws here. They hold brackets that support the hatches. Quite a bit of corrosion here, and even more on the other side. Next, we remove this front piece. It's an aluminium part, and again, undo the brackets. This one's quite clean, it's aluminium. And then we'll move on to these supports for the mudguards. They're not very detailed parts. They're threaded directly into the hull. One of the makers of parts made some very detailed versions of these, but he's no longer producing them, so I'll have to produce my own parts. Next, we'll move on to removing the exhaust mufflers to held in place with M3 cap heads. Here you can see the holes where, if you're using a smoker, the smoke would enter. So we just unscrew them now. I'm thinking of making my own exhaust mufflers in sheet metal. These are a bit clumpy. Here you can see the entry hole for smokers. And an exit hole. And now onto this piece. It's totally the wrong shape. It should be a domed cover. I think it was a fan belt cover. It had a tow hitch welded to it. So we'll remove this part anyway. But I think it's one of those parts that I'm going to have to make a replacement. And now let's move on to the side escape hatches. Not a bad amount of detail in these. They're held on with M3 screws, but I'll eventually put cone heads in. They'll also need some reprofiling, but they're not bad parts. And now onto the return rollers. I've taken the tires off. You can see quite a bit of dirt in here. First thing is remove the hubcaps. They're just held on with countersunk screws. So we'll take these off and put them aside safely. And the return roller just pops off. The tires are normally glued on. Happily these are not glued on, so it'll make life a lot easier. But once it's all painted, I will glue the tires in place. They'll need quite a bit more detailing. Here you can see the mounts for the return rollers, and these have bearings fitted inside. They're moving quite freely. So next will be to take these off. we'll have a look inside them. Now we just unscrew the return rollers. It's M3 screws and M3 nuts. They're a little bit tight, but they're coming away now. And now they're off. You can see they're a little bit grubby, and you can see the bearings inside, again held in place with a countersunk screw and a washer. Now we move on to the bump stops. There's quite a few of these. They're all held on with M3 screws again, so we just remove some of those. It's quite a bit of scope for detailing on these parts. And here you can see the rubber stop on the bottom of the bump stops. Then we move on to these suspension units, the suspension shocks. I think the springs inside. These shocks were fitted front and rear. They would have been fitted on the Tiger as well, but the Tiger shocks were fitted on the inside of the vehicle, whereas these are on the outside. Plenty of scope for adding details to these parts. I'll put up some photos of the originals. And next we can start removing the road wheels. The hubcaps screw into place. Be a bit of scope for detailing these as well. I'll fit scale nuts or screws as appropriate on the hubcaps. You can see the road wheels are held on again with countersunk screws and the washer, and they just slide off. I'll remove the tires now. Just place them separately, they'll all need a good clean up. Here I've bagged all the small parts, all the hubcaps, the washers, the countersunk screws. Here you can see the bearing in the wheel. It's a bearing in each wheel. Be quite a bit more detailing to do on the road wheels as well. Next, we'll have a look at the torsion bar suspension. The torsion bars are held in place with grub screws, so I'll just loosen off each grub screw. The grub screws are screwed down onto flat portions of the torsion bars. So once I've removed all the screws, the torsion bars will simply pull out. This old kit has the rectangular profile swing arms. They should be a round profile. So I'll try to do some work on these at a later stage. And all the swing arms are coming away easily. And next, onto the idler wheel. First of all, we need to remove the hubcap. I'll use a needle nose pliers to loosen them and remove them. They're not actually a screw fit, they're actually a tension fit. And that's the first one removed. And you can see again the idler wheel is held in place with a countersunk screw and a washer. And once I remove the screw, the idler should come away fairly easily. And again, 2 bearings on each wheel. This is the idler wheel adjustment. I'll remove the whole thing as one unit and clean up later. So that's the rear idler assembly removed. The adjusters. Clean all these individual parts up later. They're quite bad. The hubcap is just held on with a countersunk screw. And now you have a taper lock. This is holding the sprocket onto the shaft, so we'll remove that next. Thanks for all the nice comments, thanks for the new subscriptions. Please remember to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with future videos. All new subscriptions are appreciated. Please also hit the like button. You can see the sprocket wheel turns nicely on its shaft. It's held in place with this taper bush, which we'll now remove. You can see there are 3 holes here. There's a grub screw in each of these. These tightened grub screws are holding the taper lock onto the shaft, and there's a piece of key steel here to stop it rotating on the shaft. To remove the sprocket, we'll slacken off the 2 of these grub screws, take one out and fit it into the release hole. We'll put a bit of oil on the screw first. So I'm just slackening off the grub screws. This one I'll remove. I can see there's a little bit of grease on them already. I'm just going to apply some oil. And I'm threading it into the release hole. And now you can see it's released. Now I'll just remove the taper. Be careful you don't lose the piece of key steel. That stops the taper from rotating on the shaft. Now I'm going to remove the drive sprocket covers. Here you can see the drive sprocket. It's a good sign that there's not too much rubbing. There's a little bit of rubbing here, but not too much. Armortek generally recommend that you don't pack these with grease, as any bits of metal will mix with the grease and turn into a grinding paste. So if you're not going to drive it too often, best to leave it dry. And next, this is the mount for the motors. It's held in place with these 4 countersunk screws. So I just remove them. And here's the motor mount. You can see on this side there's some scoring on the hull side. That's because the gear here, the shaft wasn't properly glued to the bearings, so it was moving. So this was rubbing against the side of the hull. So before I reassemble, I'll make sure I glue this properly. I'll use some Loctite 638 to secure the bearing to the shaft. You can see the track hanger is already bent and twisted, so it looks like that is just a piece of junk. I'll probably find some use for it. And now we're left with the basic hull structure. We'll start taking that apart. The front hull plate is already fairly loose, so I'll just remove the screws. This is fairly standard for most Armortek models. You can see the steel brackets here. It's the same on the rear armoured plate. Again, you can see absolutely no detail on this. It's something we'll be working on in the future. I'm now removing the whole side. It's held on with the countersunk screws, so I'll just remove the last couple. And the side should come away. Next we remove the suspension bars. They're screwed on from underneath, so we'll flip the floor over and undo the screws. Normally on a Tiger, I replace these screws with countersunk screws. I don't know if that's necessary on the Panzer III, maybe it had bolts showing. I'll have to have a look at some photos. I think it keeps it cleaner if you're using countersunk screws. You can see there's brass bushes here. They seem to be well secured in, so I won't touch them. I'll just clean them. So that's everything disassembled. Everything will need a thorough clean up. I'll show you some of the products I'm using for that. So thanks for watching. That's pretty much it for this week. Next job will be to start preparation for reassembly. So a lot of the parts will need to be cleaned up. In the next video I'll show you the products I'm using to clean up the parts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay up to date with future videos. But before I finish up, I'm going to show you some photographs of some of the small parts of the kit and some photographs of original parts. And what I'll be aiming at while building the Panzer III, I hope to improve some of the parts and make my own parts also. Here we have the road wheels. They're quite flat. They need quite a bit more profiling. And also to fit the correct screws around the hubcap. Let's have a look at some pictures of the real road wheel. And this is the return wheel. The recess should be a lot deeper, so this will be reprofiled as well, and also the correct screws fitted around the hubcap. Here we have the exhaust muffler. It's a block of aluminium. I'll either reshape this or make a new set in sheet metal. This piece is combined fan belt cover and tow hook, but it's completely the wrong profile. I'll have to make a completely new part for this. We'll compare this now to the original. Again, lots of scope for detailing this. I'll probably use the kit part, but add a lot more detail. And here we have the escape hatch. It's not too bad, a little bit of reprofiling and it should be fine. And use cone head screws. I'll have to make some cone heads. And then finally, this is the support for the side mudguards. I want to make something a bit more detailed. They're quite visible on the mudguards, and nice detail to add.